Well, Justin Baldoni is fighting back and he's got some receipts. He is now suing the New York Times in a $250 million lawsuit, and he is dragging Blake Lively's complaints against him or her claims against him. And we're going to dive into all of it today. Part one, let's do it. You're listening to No Filter with Zack Peter, your go-to source for all the latest pop culture and reality TV tea, served fresh all week long. Now, let's dive in. Welcome on in, welcome on in, welcome on in, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Happy New Year. Whew, I was not expecting to kick off the new year with another bombshell lawsuit, but here we go. Al Wood's in the house. Let's get it. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful, lovely ringing into the new year with your friends, with your family, with your pets, whoever you were celebrating with, or, if you were like me, double fisting it on a New Year's Eve and just living your best life, good for you too. We did it. We're here, 2025. Let's get it. Okay. We have a lot that we'll dive into today because Justin Baldoni has just filed his counter lawsuit. Well, actually, I guess it's technically not a counter lawsuit because Blake Lively, as of now, still has not filed a lawsuit. She still has only filed her legal complaint against Justin Baldoni. But we're going to get into all of it because it's a lot. It's a lot. So I've decided to break it up into two different parts. Today, we're going to go over the lawsuit itself. Who he's suing, why he's suing, and all of the allegations and claims that he's making against her, and a lot of his counterclaims in response to the allegations that she made against him in her complaint. And then tomorrow we'll go through, he does a whole deep dive outline of the timeline of what went down from the beginning of production till more recently. So we'll go over that full timeline tomorrow because his lawsuit is 87 pages. So it's a little longer than her lawsuit, but there's just there's a lot to get into that I want to make sure we don't gloss over anything. And I just feel like there's so much to cover. But as we know, her complaint was over. So she files her complaint against Wayfair Studios, Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Steve Sarowitz, Melissa Nathan, who's the Crisis PR publicist, her company, the Agency Group, Jennifer Abel, Justin Baldoni's publicist, her company, the RWA Communications LLC, Jed Wallace, who they claim helped with astroturfing and helped, target this social media campaign against her online, and his company, Street Relations Inc. And her complaint was for damages for sexual harassment, retaliation, failure to investigate, prevent, and or remedy harassment, retaliation, aiding and abetting harassment and retaliation, breach of contract, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligence, false light invasion of privacy, and interference with prospective economic advantage. Now, we did get into her lawsuit more in depth. We had a two-part podcast that came out last week. It was the week of Christmas, where we dove into all of the claims and the summary of her lawsuit as well. But now we're specifically talking about Baldoni's lawsuit. And Baldoni, which is an official lawsuit, and they are demanding a jury trial, so they're not looking to settle. But Wayfair Studios, Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Steve Sorowitz, Melissa Nathan, the Agency Group, Jennifer Abel, RWA Communications, Jed Wallace, and Street Relations are all suing the New York Times, which is interesting because people are like, why are they suing the New York Times and not Blake Lively? So we'll dive into all of that. But I really quickly just wanted to give you guys a thank you and a shout out. So we got our final numbers for 2024, and we had 4.45 million streams. So over 4 million streams for No Filter in 2024 alone, which brings us to over 20 million streams overall. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for supporting No Filter with Zack Peter. My favorite episodes are episodes like this where we get to do legal deep dives and read through lawsuits and recap everything. But thank you guys for a really successful 2024. 4.4 million streams is very impressive. So thank you guys. I appreciate you. I know we've been for the past week, we've been in the Spotify top 50 and the Apple top 30 charts. So you guys have been really good to No Filter lately, and I appreciate you. Thank you. I love you. I love you, love you, love you. Love you. Okay, let's dive into it. Sorry, didn't mean to drag it on too much, but please continue to leave reviews on Apple and Spotify, and all those things really do help. Like this video if you're watching it right now on YouTube. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and also weigh in on the live chat. I'll jump into the live chat later on. Okay, so Justin Baldoni and Co. are suing the New York Times. And so I would imagine that this is part of a deeper strategy or a bigger strategy to dig up dirt on Blake Lively's relationship with the Times in discovery, right? Because they're demanding a jury trial. So they seem to want everything to be dragged out publicly. They want the public to know everything, which is why they're demanding this jury trial. They want it to be exposed. I would imagine that a lawsuit against Blake Lively will follow. We did hear last week there was a report that in the new year they were planning to file their lawsuit against Blake Lively, but it looks like they're starting with the New York Times. They also make it very clear in this lawsuit that this is the first of many other lawsuits that they plan to file, referencing some bad actors in the mix. So it's possible that they may also be planning to sue Ryan Reynolds. And there's a lot that we'll dive into. But so that he's suing for a few different things. So suing for libel, and so libel is it's written or published statements that are false and they are harmful to a person's reputation, right? It's a type of defamation, but it's specific to written word, whereas false statements that are spoken, those would be considered slander. So that's the difference between slander and libel. They're both forms of defamation, but in order to prove libel, you have to prove that the statement is false. You also have to prove that there was publication of the false statement. So in this case, the statements were published in the New York Times, and you have to prove that the statements were published either carelessly or with malice. I imagine he's going to fight that this was done with negligence, so that they, carelessly ran it without proper fact checking. I would imagine he's going after the New York Times for um, saying that they did this carelessly, and he'll probably go after Blake Lively. This is just my prediction, saying that she did this with malice and that she was more calculated and this was intentional on her end. But I imagine he's going to fight that it was done with negligence, so that they carelessly ran with it without proper fact checking. And, he's going to have to show that there were damages done, which at this point, I feel like it really tanked his entire reputation and his career. They also do, as we'll see, lay out different death threats that they were getting as well. So I believe that they published it with only giving him 14 hours to respond, and then they ended up publishing the article within 12 hours. So that's going to come into factor at some point as well. So first one is he's suing for libel. Next, he's suing for false light invasion of privacy, which is when someone is portrayed negatively in the public. So similar to libel, it has to be published, and you have to prove that they did this intentionally and recklessly, and that there were damages, which can include emotional distress. So Blake claimed a lot of emotional distress. One of her claims or one of the damages that she was fighting for was intentional infliction of emotional distress. Everybody loves intentional infliction of emotional distress. So false light invasion of privacy, very similar to libel. Then we have promissory fraud. I'm assuming this is going to be in relation to the timing of the publishing. So, promissory fraud is when someone promises to do something but lies, and you are harmed as a result of them not meeting that promise, right? Like telling him that he has 14 hours to respond, and yet they publish the story within 12 hours, which is also not enough time to review an entire 80-page lawsuit and issue a sufficient response, right? Especially if they're claiming that they did their due diligence, which is part of what he's going to prove, or what he plans to prove is that they did not do their due diligence, and they either did this recklessly or they knew that the information they were putting out there was false or misleading, and they ran with it anyway, which would be malice. And then the last thing that he's suing for is breach of implied in fact contract, which is similar to promissory fraud. It's where there's an agreement and an understanding between the parties, and one party fails to uphold those obligations that were discussed. So the first two, libel and false light invasion of privacy, very similar. And then promissory fraud and breach of implied in fact contract, also very similar. So then they dive into how the New York Times reached out to them just before 10 p.m. East Coast time, but just before 10 p.m., telling them that the story is going to go live at noon the next day. basically only giving them, so yeah, they technically gave them 14 hours to craft a response, but it was an overnight, like, time frame of when they were allowed to respond. So imagine being told at 10 p.m., "Hey, by the way, we're running this hit piece on you tomorrow." Like, how do you even, like, what, then you have to get the attorneys on the phone, you have to get your team on the phone, and it's 10 o'clock at night at this point. And that's when they expect you is to use that time frame in that window before 12 p.m. the next day. That's insane. Even if we're, let's say that majority of his team was on, Pacific time and not Eastern time, LA time, not New York time. Even if that's the case, 10, 9, 8, 7, that's 7 p.m., right? 7 p.m. from when they have to gather everybody together to put something out, because then this article is going to go live in 12, 11, 10, 9 a.m. So they have until 9 a.m. the next day to essentially craft their statement if they happen to be, if their team is on the West Coast. So not a whole lot of time. They claimed that the New York Times relied solely on Blake Lively's self-serving narrative rather than the actual facts, which the New York Times claims that there were thousands of text messages that they went through to verify these claims. And you're going to see that there were a lot of text messages that were conveniently left out. So when they issued their response saying that these were cherry-picked text messages, we're going to see that. Okay. They also point out that she filed a request for a right to sue letter with the California Civil Rights Department, which is a CRD, rather than an actual lawsuit. So this is where it did get confusing as well, because a lot of the press was running saying that she's suing Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively's suing Justin Baldoni. And so, yes, this is like a prerequisite. This can be a precursor to a lawsuit, which is what people were assuming. However, um, she still is not actually filed an official lawsuit. And so they're saying that generally those filings with the CRD, those are generally kept confidential unless they happen to get leaked to the press, which is convenient because not only was this complaint sent to the New York Times, but the New York Times also made it as an easy to download PDF, which I was calling out from the very beginning. I was like, this is really weird that the New York Times is making this lawsuit so accessible that essentially anybody can go online and just download it and read all of her claims and take them as fact. His legal team also points out that there's no discovery process with a letter to the CRD. So she wouldn't be under any of the scrutiny to prove her case with any real evidence. She can really just she'd be like, here's my complaint. Here are all the things that I want to list out. It's my word against no word. She puts in a couple of cherry picked text messages and boom, it looks solid, right? It looks damaging. Um, it's wild. And it's like, it's a really interesting point. And they're claiming that she never intended to actually file the lawsuit. She really just filed this complaint specifically because she wanted to ruin and harm his reputation. That was, and that's kind of what I speculated as well, because I was like, even if she doesn't file the lawsuit moving forward, like even if she just drops it from here on out, the hit to his reputation is already done, and people already got to download it, and they're like, oh my god, it's in a legal document. So if it's in a legal document, it must be true. When people don't realize that in a civil lawsuit, you can literally make any claim. I can say Joe Schmo down the street punched me in the face, and I can put that in a civil lawsuit. And then I would have to prove that in court should it move forward, right? And a lot of times people make allegations in these lawsuits hoping to settle because it's cheaper to pay out than it is to fight it in court. So it's just because you read it in a civil complaint or in a civil lawsuit, it doesn't actually make it fact at all. You have to prove that case. And it seems like Justin Baldoni's legal team feels very strongly that they can prove that case because they want to move forward. They are demanding for a jury trial so that they can present all of the evidence. Um, his legal team, Baldoni's legal team, points out that while the New York Times told them that they had until noon the next day to respond, that the New York Times ended up publishing the article at 10 a.m. instead of 12 p.m. So this to me is probably where they're going to fight uh, for promissory fraud and breach of implied fact contract. I think that's what they're going to fight them on, is the fact that they told them they had a specific time frame in which to respond before the article was going to go live, and then they ended up publishing the article sooner than, but I mean, even then, a 12-hour window, like, to not even give them 24 hours before publishing. And I get it, they probably didn't want them to get some sort of head up to, respond in a bigger way, but still, it's 14 hours, and then you really only give them 12 hours, and that window is an overnight window, what you expect them to be pulling their statement together at 1, 2 in the morning. It's insane. So also makes you question things, really. So they didn't give them much of a chance to respond. It seemed a little strategic that it was an overnight time frame. They made the lawsuit easy to download in a PDF, which rarely ever happens. I mean, listen, I have broken down and read a number of these lawsuits, right? This was the easiest lawsuit I've ever been able to get my hands on because the New York Times did such a big splash that the second you Google it, it's in the top SEO search engine optimization options to just click right there. Boop. Oh, I can download this lawsuit and read it myself. It was like, oh, it's not even a lawsuit, it's a complaint. And again, those are confidential. So it's not like there's a database that people can easily access to go and download that themselves, because generally those aren't released to the public. The New York Times wanted to make sure this was easily accessible to the public. But they claimed that the article was published with the central thesis, leading with the inflammatory headline, "We can bury anyone," which is a quote they pulled from one of the text messages. And while it relied on Blake's narrative of sexual harassment, they claimed that that's categorically false and easily disproven, pointing out that the New York Times really did not review all of the communications that they had, because if they did, then they would have very easily seen that there were things taken out of context in her complaint. And Baldoni's legal team does start to fill in some of those missing pieces. They include a number of text messages with Baldoni and his PR team monitoring the headlines that were coming up about Blake and the press surrounding the movie, ensuring that they were not the ones behind the attacks, and praising Blake's public wins because they were acknowledging them as beneficial for the film, right? Where they're telling him, like, listen, at least a win for her is a win for the movie. So this, headline is good or whatever. And also monitoring the things that people were saying about her negatively and being like, this is not a good look, but listen, we're doing this. And Baldoni is like, okay, but like, we're not behind this, right? And you see the text messages from them. They're just like, no, we're not behind this. They also show, oh, this is a good one. Okay. They show Blake Lively's team manipulating those text messages. Okay. There's one in particular where they show Melissa Nathan, who's the crisis PR person that was brought on, and they show a text message of her sharing a article in the Daily Mail. And the article was titled, "Could Blake Lively Be Canceled?" Okay. So it's Melissa sending this to Jennifer Abel, who's Justin Baldoni's publicist. So crisis PR and publicist in this exchange. She sends a Daily Mail article to which Jennifer Abel responds, "Wow, you really outdid yourself with this piece." And Melissa replies, "This is why you hired me, right? I'm the best." Now, that was a big one for a lot of people. A lot of people were like, whoa, this is messy. This is bad. This isn't looking really good. Like, it looks like she said, "That's why you hired me. I'm the best to plan an article like this." Okay. That's what Blake Lively's complaint showed us. That's all Blake showed us, right? But now we have Justin Baldoni's team that's showing the full text exchange, where they actually removed the emoji that Jennifer Abel used in her text message, which shows that the tone of it was more sarcastic. She had the upside down face emoji. Actually, I think I have a screenshot of it that I can pull up and post on the screen for you guys. It's wild because you literally see, like, oh, the context of it completely changes because when they're, and this is the hard part, right? When you're reading text messages at face value, sometimes you don't always understand the context of it. Here, I actually have the screenshot of it. So you can see here on the left is from Blake's complaint, and you can even see the way that they change the text messages, where in other parts of her complaint, they show like an actual screenshot of the messages, where I remember reading the complaint and thinking this was interesting because it looks like it's not a reenactment. I don't know the proper term for it, but they essentially retyped the text messages, because if you look at the left, the blue and green blurbs, those are like rewritings. I mean, I guess like a reenactment of the actual message. So instead of using the actual screenshot, which they do use a number of times throughout their complaint, this one specifically was a rewriting of the messages, where you see them very clearly remove the emoji that shows that the tone is sarcastic, and then they remove a series of other text messages that follow to show that the conversation was a lighthearted conversation between the two publicists, right? So So they removed the emoji and then they conveniently cut Melissa's response, which is heading to the airport. And then there is a drive through the jungle and there's going to be no reception for around 24 hours. Joke. 45 minutes. And then Jennifer Abel replies, I'm sorry, you being out for 45 minutes was not included in the scope. Unacceptable. So it's clear that the exchange is a sarcastic exchange between the two of them, and they're laughing about, their workflow or whatever. And then Melissa responds, which it looks like it was a GIF or some sort of image. It doesn't show because it kind of gets cut off, but you can see that Jennifer responds to that with the laugh, with the ha ha. When you can heart a text message, you could do the ha ha into the text message. She does a ha ha, showing that the nature of this exchange was lighthearted. It was not serious. And, Jennifer and Melissa clearly do not believe that they planted this Daily Mail article, which Blake Lively's team made it seem like they were, celebrating the fact that they planted this article and it was looking bad on Blake Lively. Then they include more text messages showing Melissa getting sent the actual Daily Mail article for the first time. So showing that she did not plant this story, but a reporter sent her the article and they have the screenshot of it. And her response is, damn, this is not fair because it's also not me. So they're claiming that Melissa Nathan was the one who was orchestrating all this with this PR takedown. She says it right here in response to getting the Daily Mail article. Damn, this is not fair because it's also not me. Everything now looks like it's me, proving that she was completely unaware of this article coming out and that she was not part of the publishing of it. They claim that any negative press about Blake Lively was a consequence of her own actions, referencing her grab your friends and wear your florals comment. And so they show the text exchange between the team where they're like, oh my God, this is a bad look. Look at this isn't going well. And the promotion of her hair care brand and her alcohol brand, which clearly landed as tone deaf to the audience and to people who were watching it, considering many DV instances are often linked to alcohol, right? There's usually alcohol abuse in a lot of these instances of DV. Not to say that's in every case, but the two do go hand in hand quite often statistically. So it's not a good look when you're the lead actress of this film and you're promoting your alcohol brand in conjunction with the film about DV that does often link to alcohol abuse. Then we see more text messages throughout it as well. More text messages where Melissa specifically writes, we didn't tell Jed to go after the idea that her promo was inappropriate. That happened organically because people saw the actual movie and were like, wait, this is a movie about domestic violence. That they were told to wear their florals too. Zoe sent me this on Saturday and goes, this is a crazy way to market the movie, followed by screenshots of her promo writing, like, come on, we had nothing to do with that. And then they release more text messages as well. So here they're acknowledging that, the public is definitely turning on Blake because of the way she's promoting the film. And now part of her claim was that, oh, well, this was a Sony approved marketing plan and we all agreed on this, which Baldoni later gets into the fact that he didn't want to promote the film that way. He didn't want it to have that lighthearted storytelling, that he wanted it to focus more on DV awareness and bringing light to the seriousness of that issue, which we'll get into. And then there's one text message specifically that drags Perez Hilton. And this one's a pretty ruthless drag, but the point that Melissa makes is that, like, if we're going to leak a story, the last person that we're going to give it to is Perez Hilton of all people. And so in it, I guess Perez Hilton posted a reel where he's dragging Blake and he has like some insider tea about This Is Us. And so Melissa writes, with the link to the video, none of us would ever do this, and no one even pays attention to this person past 2005. He is not relevant. He does not create a news headline. He does not get pickup. He is now just a troll. There is no outlet that would cover anything he said or take it seriously. It's organic. She's blown herself up by her own actions. So this is the person that Blake Lively's team has claimed orchestrated this entire takedown of her, who's watching all of this unfolds and who has a series of text messages during that time that's like sharing these articles and videos with the team, and that's like, listen, like, this is not looking good for her. She's taking herself down. This is all organic, which does come back to the New York Times about how they said, we reviewed pages and pages of thousands of text messages. Well, if you reviewed pages and pages and thousands of text messages, why did you conveniently not include these text messages that show them acknowledging that they were not part of this takedown of Blake Lively? They're showing that this was an organic unfolding on the internet, which is what I've been saying since Blake Lively's complaint first dropped. And then there are more messages saying the content creators are on fire. And Justin, she just handed it to them on a plate. Just concentrate on the success of the movie. So they're acknowledging, which is what I said from the beginning, the social media, the internet sleuths are the ones that were running this narrative. And here's the thing, even if you want to say the guy Jed that they brought in and they accused him of astroturfing, which they never even proved that he did any astroturfing. There's no proof of that, right? It's just an allegation with zero metadata or anything to prove that Jed was behind specific astroturfing versus others. But in it, here they clearly acknowledge that it's content creators and TikTokers that are running this narrative, which, let's be clear, you can't really control the TikTokers. Because I mean, listen, I posted something um, and I posted a video last night and it's already now getting millions and millions of views. I don't think Jed Vance is the one that's doing that. Jed Wallace. I don't think Jed Wallace is the one that's behind it. And if it is, thank you, Jed. To the 700 people watching this live right now on YouTube, thank you, Jed. JK, LOL. You can't like, they're not paying me. Like, I'm not behind that machine, nor was that reporter that released the video, the little bump video where Blake's like, where she's like, she tells Blake, congrats on your little bump, and Blake's like, congrats on your little bump. And then people started to resurface all of that stuff. So here they're assuring Justin, like, listen, the content creator's on fire. They're going after her already. Just focus on the fact that the film's, doing well, that there's success behind it. Then they show text messages being all over the online heat about Blake, saying that they already know that Blake's publicist is likely going to blame them for all the heat that's coming up online. Also referencing that Blake's publicist, Leslie Sloan, who's behind, Blake Lively, Leslie Sloan formerly defended Harvey Weinstein amid his whole scandal, right? And they even referenced the takedown of Rose McGowan. Which you guys will remember, Rose McGowan has openly spoken about, these PR hits that, people trying to come at her and shame her and shut her up for speaking out against Harvey Weinstein, only to come and find out during all of that time, Leslie Sloan, who currently represents Blake Lively, formerly represented Harvey Weinstein. Now he's, dealing with his own stuff after he was found, his whole scandal broke, and he was ultimately, justice was served there. But like, it's crazy that like she's like such a believer of women and she wants to support Blake Lively in her sexual harassment case, yet she was over here defending Harvey Weinstein. And yes, I know that that is her client, but like, hello, at some point, like, just like WME when they decided to part ways with Justin Baldoni. Interesting, right? It's all a spin though, right? WME headline, WME, breaks this. There's a story about WME dumping Justin Baldoni, only to find out, well, then Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively are also represented by WME, and they want to make sure that they're on the right side of history. It's also the orchestration of using the New York Times, right? Like, think about it. Who's the one that broke the story about Harvey Weinstein? Right? With Rose McGowan and Ronan Farrow, it was the New York Times. So if you want to leak something and do another expose, like, people already take the New York Times so seriously because of their expose on Harvey Weinstein, that it's a smart move to plant this in that same publication to take down Justin Baldoni, because people already see the New York Times associated with taking down these strong men that are powerful in Hollywood. It's all media spin. I saw it from the second it all started to come out. But so yeah, they're saying that, Blake's publicist is likely going to blame their team for it. And then they show Leslie Sloan, Blake's publicist, her text messages where she claims that the cast hates Justin Baldoni, and that's why there's all this heat and there's all this tension, right? Is because the cast just doesn't like him for whatever reason. But she acknowledges that it has nothing to do with Blake's relationship with Justin. It has everything to do with the cast just doesn't like Justin. So she's trying to deflect, saying that Blake is not the problem. But suddenly the narrative has shifted to Blake being harassed by Justin, which they all claim were not things that they were hearing throughout the production of It Ends With Us. And oh, trust me, they have a very different story of what was going on during the production of It Ends With Us. And let's just say, it doesn't look good for Blake Lively. Then they point out with text messages the times that they've dealt with Leslie, who claims that she's a constant liar, referencing these messages that they have with the Daily Mail and TMZ in communication with Melissa Nathan, revealing that Melissa was not a source. Melissa's the PR crisis manager, revealing that Melissa was not a source of theirs, TMZ's, but that they had other sources that were leaking info to them. Because Melissa's asking them, she's like, "Where are you getting this info?" And they're like, "Oh, we have other sources close to production that are giving us this info." And they show the text exchange between Melissa and TMZ. And then they showed TMZ getting tipped off about all of these PR complaints. Like, we have a source that's telling us that there are all these HR complaints, and that there was this meeting with Ryan Reynolds. And apparently, which Melissa Nathan reveals, and we see this in the text messages, she reveals to TMZ off the record. She says, "Listen, off the record, there were not a series of HR complaints. There was only one HR complaint, and there's only one HR complaint throughout the duration of production, and it wasn't even a complaint from Blake, nor was it a complaint about Justin Baldoni. It was a complaint about ageism that was filed between two other crew members that weren't really, talking about Blake or Justin. It was an ageism complaint, and they did an investigation, and the investigation found no wrongdoing or no evidence of ageism. So the only record of an HR complaint that they have was not by Blake Lively. It was by this other crew member who accused somebody else of ageism. And that was settled. And then we have Ryan Reynolds and the meeting with Ryan. Remember, it was supposed to be this like come to Jesus meeting with all hands on deck, and everybody was supposed to be there. And it painted it as, it was everybody against Justin Baldoni, when apparently that wasn't the case. It was more of everybody against Blake and Ryan. Blake and Ryan were the two that were trying to, share their side of the story. And it was hosted at Blake and Ryan's penthouse. They invited everybody over because Blake was refusing to film unless she had this list of demands that was met. And this is where, we have the which we'll get into more in the timeline that we'll break down tomorrow. But this is where we have the meeting where Ryan apparently berated Justin Baldoni in front of everybody. And even, there was a producer there that was like, "Oh my God, in 40 years that I've worked in this business," they told Justin, "I've never seen anybody berate someone else in front of people like this before." And then you had an exec at Sony that told Justin Baldoni, now these are just his claims. We don't have actual proof of them saying this to him, but he's claiming that the producer said that in 40 years. And then one of the Sony execs even came up and apologized, saying that they wish that they would have intervened and stepped in. But it seems like nobody wanted to get on the bad side of Ryan Reynolds, and nobody wanted to go up against Ryan Reynolds. Listen, he's an A-list powerful actor in Hollywood. When he's going off the hinge and screaming at somebody and berating them in front of other people, that's a big issue. But it seemed like a big part of the reason, it was more in relation to the fat shaming comments, where she said that he tried to fat shame her. Because he wanted to know how much she weighed, because he was supposed to do this lifting scene with her. And then she claims in her complaint that the lifting scene didn't even exist. And he's now responding. He's saying, "Well, the lifting scene didn't exist because once she found out that I asked her weight, she had the lifting scene cut from the movie. So we didn't end up getting that scene because she didn't want to do that scene. And she was upset about asking about her weight." But he's like, "Listen, I asked about her weight because for safety precautions, I needed to make sure if there was going to be a lifting scene, we needed to know how much she weighed. But like, I wasn't trying to say she was fat. Like, it's like it had nothing to do with that." Um, but then we see more text messages between Crisis PR Melissa with Blake's publicist assuring her that she will not be, where Melissa's assuring Leslie that she will not be doing one thing without speaking to you. "I've told everyone not to do a thing, not to plant a thing, not to seed a thing, or even speak one word to a report or speak to one reporter, even on background." And Leslie agrees, and she's like, "Okay, me either." So they seem to be in agreement that they, are very much planning to work together to not, you know, talk to any of the reporters or respond to anything unless they're all on the same page. They also reference Stephanie Jones. Now, Stephanie Jones is from Jones Work PR, who is also suing Justin Baldoni. Or no, she's suing Jennifer Abel. Remember the publicist that she claims worked for her. And she's like, "I fired her because I found out that they were doing this whole orchestrated campaign against Blake Lively. And I had no idea about this. I had no clue that there was this orchestration to take down Blake Lively," which Jennifer Abel's like, "Because there was no orchestration to take down Blake Lively. Our job was to protect our client, but we didn't need to break down Blake in the process. Like Blake was doing a good job of, Blake can do bad all by herself." But so they referenced this woman, Stephanie Jones, who appears to be working with Blake Lively's team and also leaked her filing to the New York Times as well. But so they claim, Stephanie was like, I had no idea that any of this Blake takedown was going down behind our backs or anything. While I was working with Jennifer Abel, she went rogue, remember? And then they're like, really, bitch? Because here are your emails. Stephanie, here are the emails that you're CC'd on. Here are your correspondence with some of these articles. So for you to say that you were completely unaware of any of this is wild and ridiculous and completely false because you were copied on a lot of the negative press surrounding Blake Lively. You were aware of this, and you must have also been aware that we were not behind this. So then they referenced the birthing video, right? Where Blake claimed that the producer, Jamie Heath, showed this pornographic video of his naked wife. And it was so uncomfortable because he showed her this video. And, they're claiming that the claim that Blake makes is patently false because the video was not sexual in nature at all, that there was nothing sexual about the video, that it was a home birth video in relation to a birthing scene that Blake Lively was going to have to perform in the film. And then they show a screenshot of the actual video, and you can see based off of the angle of the video, you can't even see this woman's pelvic region. Right? It's all underwater. So unless they decided to take the iPhone and put it underwater to show the cooch, you're not actually seeing any of that. So they're saying the way that they phrased it as it was this, inappropriate pornographic video of his wife was a complete mischaracterization of what the actual video was or the context of why the video was even shown to Blake Lively. Then we get to the breastfeeding claim where, she claims that they came into her dressing room while she was breastfeeding and it made her uncomfortable. And, that Justin would just come in there. And then they're like, well, actually, here's a text message from Blake Lively to Justin Baldoni where she's inviting him. She's like, hey, I'm pumping in my dressing room, but do you want to come over and run lines? Come over. And he's like, I'm eating with the crew right now, but I'll be right there. And she's like, okay, cool. And so he went over to run lines with her because she invited him into her trailer to run lines with her. And I guess when she's talking about pumping, yeah, there's a reasonable expectation to be like, oh, well, she must not be uncomfortable if she's disclosing this information and inviting me over. So why would I think that it's inappropriate for, me to be there if she doesn't seem to be making an issue of it, right? She also she discloses that she's pumping in the trailer with the invite to come over so they can run lines together. So they're like, that's a total mischaracterization. There was no, she didn't appear to be uncomfortable with any of this at all from the start. Then remember how she said that, Justin told her that her outfit was sexy, and that was inappropriate that he called her outfit sexy, right? Well, they're claiming, no, 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 no. That's not the entire truth. Yes, he did say that the outfit was sexy, but it was only in reference to to her saying she wanted the outfit to be sexy, which he claims that, she's the one that set the tone and she's the one that used the word sexy first. Okay. And then they show Blake's own text messages yet again in reference to her character's wardrobe. And in her text message, Blake Lively writes, I will show you both ways, but the beanie is much sexier. It's the look. It feels very TV without, especially with the crop top in the snow. It justifies the rest of the skin. And also, is a girl I would check out walking down the street because it washes the effort off the rest of the look. So he said, yeah, I said her outfit looked sexy because in her text message, she was saying that she wanted her character's outfit to look sexy. So he was like, wow, your outfit does look sexy. And it's like, hello, when you had this context, like it really does change things a lot. Um, Guys, if you are watching this on YouTube right now and you're live, be sure to hit the like button. Keep weighing in on the live chat. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you can comment down below. And if you're listening on Apple, I hope you do leave an Apple podcast review. This is wild. Okay. Then we get into the part where she says that he was improvising unwanted kissing and was discussing his sex life without her consent, right? She didn't want it. Like it made her uncomfortable. And he's like, again, she was setting the tone and I was just following her lead. And so what does he do? He shows text messages from Blake Lively again. It's funny because in her complaint, never once did she share any of their exchanges, right? She didn't share any text messages of his. All she shows in her complaint are these cherry-picked text messages from, that they obtained via a subpoena with Stephanie Jones from Jones Work, who also seems to be in cahoots with them in some way because they're both suing. Like, it's so weird and so twisted that when you actually add context to these things, you're like, well, that actually does make logical sense that he said her outfit looks sexy because she said her intention was she wanted her outfit to look sexy for this character. So he shows text messages from Blake where she declines to meet with the intimacy coordinator ahead of filming. Remember her claim that there was no intimacy coordinator originally, and there wasn't an intimacy coordinator until she demanded that there was one on set. How dare they? And then he's like, excuse me, here's a text message where I told you about the intimacy coordinator and you said you didn't want to meet with her. You declined to meet with her. So he's like, yeah, when it came to doing the choreography of the scenes, I would meet with the intimacy coordinator and then I would relay the information that we developed with the intimacy coordinator back to Blake because Blake didn't have any interest in actually meeting with her. And then he shows the text message where she declines to meet with her. So he says that he had to relay those messages from the intimacy coordinator back to Blake and work as the middleman. Now, remember, she claimed that there was no intimacy coordinator, but her texts clearly prove otherwise ahead of filming. And when it comes to talking about him and his bedroom life, remember, she's like, oh, he was telling me about, his addiction and all this stuff. And he claims as part of those creative discussions that they sought to personalize and develop their characters. And in doing so, they both engaged in conversations about their individual experiences. And he says that she brought up her bedroom life, which is why he then brought up his bedroom life as they related to their characters. Context matters. And he claims that he consistently acted at the direction of the intimacy coordinator. He makes that very clear. I acted at the direction of the intimacy coordinator, who Blake didn't really seem very interested in, connecting with. Also, they reference this November 2023 protections to return to production agreement, where Blake acknowledged that the film was completed, marketed, and released safely and successfully in the end, and that neither Baldoni and Heath engaged in any harassing behavior following that agreement, which outlines the requests that they claim were already standard practice on set. They said that a lot of she had her 29 list of complaints, and he's like, some of them were like things that never happened or things that were always protections in place. And they also didn't like her use of the term no more, like no more doing this and no more doing that and no more doing this on set. And he was just like, that's really weird because they're saying no more as if this was repeatedly happening when that never happened to begin with. We have no record of that ever happening. So her claiming that this is a no more of this behavior, he's like, that behavior never even began. And it's like a lot of these things that she's asking for are standards that we already had in place, you know? Um, it's wild. They claim that they tried to do everything they could to comply with Blake's demands because they wanted to just make sure that they were doing it for the sake of the film and to ensure her comfort because she had a lot of erratic behavior on set. And, even when it came to, she was like, oh, he would add in all these last minute scenes. And they're like, well, actually, she was constantly rewriting the script and she was constantly making changes all the time, delaying production, costing us more in budget. Like there was a lot of demands that she was making, and we were just trying to comply with all of it. And then they have a series of text messages from crew members that show that Blake really was very difficult for them all to work with on set. And her changes were always all over the place. It was a lot. And it does appear that she was trying to hijack the film, not because Justin Baldoni is saying it, but because they have a number of text messages with team members and crew members that are also throughout the duration of production talking about this. So they're like, listen, here's all of our correspondence with these other people. They alleged that Blake embarked on a hostile takeover of production, even strong-arming Sony into blessing her with ultimate control. And Baldoni talks about how he had to take the high road in many instances, which now that naturally is like, oh, well, he decided he wanted to take the high road. Oh, how good of him. But then he actually shows text messages exchanges with him and other crew members where he's just like, listen, let's just do this to make her happy. Let's just do this to appease her. Like, let's just make sure that we get this film done. Like, I just want to get the film. And people are like, how are you? And then there are responses from other people on the team that are just like, I don't know how you're dealing with all of this. Like, you always take the higher road in all of this. So when he claims he kept trying to take the higher road and then has all these text messages of other people acknowledging him throughout the duration of filming that he was taking the higher road, these are other people's accounts that provide a more objective viewpoint of what was going on. Then we get into how she iced him out of the project, preventing him from even seeing a final cut of the film, taking over full creative control, and even bullying her way into getting a producer credit that was not initially agreed upon when she first joined the film. All with corresponding text messages from crew members and his team verifying this hostile takeover. It's wild. They claim that Blake made a number of demands, including that she get her producer credit and she wanted a PGA mark. Now, a PGA mark is really important because the PGA mark is a certification that identifies that this specific producer performed majority of the work on the production. It's saying that like they did a lot of the actual producing, right? And so they make it clear that Blake Lively was not initially a producer of this film, but she was demanding as production went on that she become a producer. And then she was, strongly encouraging people to write these letters of support to send to the Producers Guild so that she could get this certification for the PGA mark. Okay. To show that she did perform majority of the work. And so Jamie Heath and Justin Baldoni were like, we did not agree with this. We did not agree that she should get this certification because we don't think that she was the producer that was performing majority of the work, because that wasn't her job and that wasn't her role. Her role was to be the lead actress. So at first they fought against it. Eventually they end up buckling, putting the letters of support out there, sending it to the Producers Guild. But what Jamie Heath did that was really smart was he sent a copy of the letter to their legal team and said, listen, we submitted this letter on behalf of Blake Lively at her request. I'm not saying that we did this under duress, but we did not believe that she deserved this letter of support, but we just wanted to appease her so that we could just move forward with production because she kept halting things and making things more difficult on set. So he clarified that, yes, they did write the letter, but it was only because they were under the pressure of her threats. And so they wrote the letter to get the project completed and to abide by her demands, but they did not by any means write the letter because they believed that she deserved the PGA credit. And they have the email sent to their legal team that's included in his lawsuit. So they made it clear to their legal team, should they have to explain it at any point in the future, why they wrote this letter of support for Blake, making it clear that they did it just to appease her rather than they did it because they believed she deserved it. She then hijacked the marketing of the film, shifting from what Baldoni claims he wanted to focus on, which was DV awareness and giving a voice to survivors. And she even wanted to keep him from attending the film premiere. Because remember, she said she wanted the messaging to be more of a story of hope and to be, not sad and depressing, but like a hopeful story and whatever. And so he explains why he wasn't with any of the other cast members, saying that it was all through Blake's design. Now, this is where we have less evidence and it's more, well, I mean, I guess we do have more text exchange that he reveals from their team acknowledging certain things, but this is where it does get a little inflammatory. I'm like, okay, once, he claims that she initially didn't want him at the film premiere, but eventually she allowed it to happen, but that she made his team and his family wait in a holding area, which he claims was the basement of the venue, until she was done with doing her press, and that they had to enter into separate theaters. She also ensured that the cast was on the red carpet with her, and he wasn't allowed to come onto the red carpet until the very end after she was done, with her portion of the promotion, which was with the other cast. So when you see all these photos of her on the red carpet with the other cast members and he's not there, he's claiming it's because she didn't want him there. She made it clear that he was not allowed to be on the red carpet while she was there. All of which they back up with the group text message exchanges with Baldoni and his team at the time. And then it's also revealed that he wasn't even allowed to watch the final cut of the film, of the final edit, right? His company is producing the film and he's the director, and she went to Sony and made it clear, and they have this from the editors, right? He has texts with the editors that are like, as of last night, Sony said, we're no longer allowed to share the cut, yada, yada, yada. So he wasn't even allowed to watch the final cut of his own film until it was displayed publicly, right? Mind you, he was the director and it was his production company that was making the film, but she got her own cut of the film and she got Sony to release her version despite his version outperforming hers when they tested it in front of audiences prior to release. Because apparently they did tests, right? They tested it in front of different audiences and was like, okay, let's see which of the final cuts that they respond to. the director's cut or Blake Lively's cut. And even though audiences preferred the director's cut over Blake Lively's cut, she still made sure that her cut is the one that was pushed forward in the end. So apparently, when your husband's Ryan Reynolds, A-lister Ryan Reynolds, who brings in a lot of money for a lot of these studios, you tend to get your way. Also revealed are a number of internal text messages where he wanted to keep the focus on survivors rather than the florals. And then you have the team exchanging text messages about how, ooh, this florals thing is not a good look. And, it's not landing well with the audience and yada, yada, yada. They also showcase different death threats that they were receiving since the original New York Times article was published. And then we get into the breakdown of the timeline, which we'll recap tomorrow on the podcast. But for me, I mean, it's interesting because the difference in you know, the difference in her claims and her evidence versus his is that he's showing more context behind hers, right? We see the text messages and she's like, look at this exchange where they're claiming that they were behind this Daily Mail article. And he's like, holds up, wait a minute. There was a lot more to that exchange. And they conveniently took out this emoji to show that the tone of that message was meant to be sarcastic and not meant to be literal. And so, you see, I mean, the manipulating of the text messages to me is the biggest red flag because it's like when you're willing to manipulate text messages and then make this easier to access to the public, you're trying to control the narrative, and you're being deceitful in that. And if you're going to be slightly deceitful, then, that doesn't look good on you. But he also brings the other team members' accounts into it as well, showing like a more objective viewpoint of what was going down on set rather than, just her complaint, which relied solely on her own storytelling. And that's why I was like, listen, these are a lot of really good, things that she's saying in the court, or in the filing rather, in the complaint. But just because she's saying them doesn't actually make them true. Just because she claims it doesn't mean that that's the truth. And the unfortunate part is we're supposed to be in this era where we want to believe women and we want to believe survivors. But then we have people like Amber Heard or Jussie Smollett and now Blake Lively who put things out there and they, twist the facts and they twist the truth to meet a narrative to, and I think she's going to go all the way. Very similar to Amber Heard, right? Which was so funny that Amber Heard came out and supported Blake Lively. And I was like, oh, this is not the flex I think people think that it is, Like, Christopher Liverman in the live chat says, jury members, be sure to wear your florals. Lourdes says, Blake is not Amber Heard. Well, it has yet to be seen. It's Missy says, won't be jumping on any bandwagon. I will wait for the actual investigation. Well, again, based off of what we have. So what's funny that most people are like, I don't want to jump on a bandwagon just yet. I want to see how this all plays out. When the New York Times article came out and Blake's legal complaint came out, people were immediately jumping to conclusions. And he's demanding they want a jury trial. They want a jury to see all of the evidence. They want this to all come out. Nicole says Amber Heard is not the endorsement you want. That's what I was saying. I was like, why do people, and everyone's like, oh my God, do we need to relook at the Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing again? Did we get it wrong? I was like, did we get it wrong? We saw it all play out. That was days and days. I was like, did we just fall out of a coconut tree? Like, we watched that all play out. We saw all of the evidence. We heard the audio. We watched the videos. We watched the trial. We watched the testimony. We saw people on both sides come forth. Like, we can't rewrite history now and be like the Amber Heard thing. Maybe we were wrong about that. I was like, no. We lived that. We watched that. That happened. We're not going to do the Mandela effect here. Norma says in Hollywood, producers usually get final cut unless the director has that in his contract. Baldoni was both. Shame he lost his position, but his project was more important to him than the message. Yeah, for the message. Yes, for the message. Yes, Norma, that is true. Yeah, he was a producer. And here, the other crazy part is fucking the Ryan Reynolds of it all, where it's like, why did Ryan Reynolds have any sort of authority on this set? Why was he rewriting scenes? Why was he doing any of this? He should have had no business. He was not a producer on the film. He's not credited in any way. He shouldn't have been rewriting scenes, which Baldoni claims he wasn't even aware of that Ryan Reynolds was rewriting scenes. He didn't know that was even happening until Blake revealed that on the press tour. Nicole says, Trying. I could be wrong, but it seems like Blake is taking a small issue and blowing it out of proportion and crying out victim because she didn't like Baldoni, who is probably no angel either. If that's the case, then that makes it harder for victims in the future. This is why, like, when you see the way that she wanted the film to be marketed, right? And when you see, and thank you so much, Nicole, for this very generous super chat. Thank you, Nicole. Shout out to Nicole. Shout out, Nicole. Um, to Nicole's point that this makes it harder for victims in the future, absolutely. And it shows that her priority was never about victims. It was never about survivors, rather. Um, and like she's not helping them by doing this. And I think she's going to try to fight it all the way. I don't think she's going to back down. I think she's absolutely going to, because Cindy in the live chat says, well, what is her end game? I think she wants to save her reputation. But if anything, it ain't that good of a reputation to save anymore. Like at this point, especially the altered text message is the biggest smoking gun for me in all of this. Like, yes, there's all the storytelling that he does in his side and all the other text messages, and that's all very damaging. And she seemed very difficult to work with on set, and a lot of crew members don't seem to like her. We see a lot of the actors coming out in support of her, which is interesting. But as we know, Hollywood is very performative, and it's like they want to make sure that they're not on the wrong side of history. And when you have the New York Times publishing this, and then you see the actual complaint that most of these actors don't fucking read legal complaints, they don't read lawsuits, they don't know how easy it is or isn't to obtain, a legal complaint or a lawsuit. They just know this is the story. This is the narrative. This is what the New York Times is running this. They took down Harvey Weinstein. They must be doing the right thing. They have to be on the right side of history. I want to make sure I'm on the right side of history. Like that guy, Michelle Maroney. What a fucking idiot. He looks like such an idiot right now because he filmed A Simple Favor 2, the sequel with Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick, which we know there were issues, or there were rumored issues between Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively while filming A Simple Favor, the original movie. Now they just apparently, I believe they just wrapped production on the second film, so the sequel will be coming out. um Anna Kendrick hasn't come out in defense of Blake Lively, but Amber Heard has. So there you go. But so Michelle Maroney, who's an actor, he was the one that was like linked to Khloe Kardashian, was a year or two ago. He came out and he's just like, oh my God, I felt it on set that she was so tormented from what happened with Justin Baldoni. Like I could just see it in her when I was working with her on set. It's like, what a fucking moron. Now you look like an idiot. Everyone that just came and was just like, oh my God, can you believe, like everyone that jumped to conclusions before waiting for both sides of the story to come out. And we don't even have the truth yet, right? We have her side, we have his side, and the truth is going to lie somewhere in the middle. And we have yet to get to that point. But the fact that so many, like Michelle Maroney, to me looks like such a fucking idiot. An idiot. Like, I'm just like, you saw that she was tormented by this. Okay. Mom Unscripted said the only thing that motivates people is money. Her bad PR has hit bottom line. Well, here's the thing. She doesn't need money. That's why what she should have done is just lay low, right? She got all the bad press. She should have done what Anne Hathaway did. She should have done what Katherine Heigl did when they were reportedly difficult to work with on set. What did they do? They said, listen, I'm taking a step back. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to shut my mouth. I'm just going to, like, she doesn't need the money and she doesn't need to work, right? She can live off of Ryan Reynolds. He's Deadpool. Like, they're fine, They got Mint Mobile. They're good. So she doesn't need to work for the next 2 years. She can be at home with the kids, focus on being a mom, kind of just like shy away from the public, and then eventually come back into the light once things have settled down and she can rebrand herself, right? That would have been the smart PR move to make. This bad move. I don't think this is going to end well for her at all. Norma says with super chat, Norma says, Ryan Reynolds makes hundreds of millions for Hollywood. All he has to do is say, I won't work with your clients if you don't drop Justin. He has major influence. Absolutely, he has major influence. And that's how I think she was able to get her way in a lot of this. But now it's all coming to light. And Baldoni and his team are like, nah, we want everything to be exposed in court. And we want everybody to see all of what we have. And I imagine they're going after the New York Times first to bury Blake in discovery. I think they're going to pull up that she had an incestuous relationship with the New York Times, that this was all very strategic. So, Kenzie says, Blake is more problematic than I realized. Woody Allen, Weinstein connections, this is all bad. Yeah. But here's the other thing, though. We've reportedly heard for years that Blake Lively is difficult to work with. And we saw the montages of her interviews where she's rude to people and she's not very pleasant. She's not very nice. And people have come out speaking about how, Blake Lively is not great to work with. We don't have that same history of Justin Baldoni. You don't have all of these people that talk about how, he was inappropriate with them on set when they've worked with him prior. We don't have all of those stories, nor have we heard any of those rumors prior to this, you know? And it's like, was he really that protected? Justin Baldoni, is he really that powerful of a Hollywood actor or a Hollywood director that people were really going to protect him for all these years? Come on. Let's put our thinking caps on here. Lourdes says this is about workplace safety and being able to safely make a complaint. What he did, if true, is illegal. What is illegal? Please explain to me what he did that was illegal and what evidence you have to prove that he actually did that. 'Cause remember last time when somebody came in here, she's like, he did SA, he did SA. It's like, actually, no, that wasn't. It was misconduct. Misconduct and SA, very different. It was misconduct that she alleged, which she claimed made her feel like she was sexually harassed in the workplace. Not to mention all the number of harassment cases against her companies. I don't think everyone's ready for those conversations. Because let's be clear, she has been sued before. Diane Power says, Zach, you should have Nick Vile listen to your podcast. I doubt he will, because I know he doesn't like Justin Baldoni, number one. And number two, I saw clips of his coverage, and there was like one girl on there, and she's just like, it's black and white. He's a terrible person. It's black and white. I'm like, what is black and white? You have one legal complaint that's a civil filing. That's not an actual lawsuit. There are no criminal charges that have ever been filed. It's like, this is a lot of it is based off of her own storytelling. So that is not fact. And there's not enough evidence to back up a lot of the claims that she's making, especially the retaliation case where she says that they orchestrated this takedown of her reputation, and it was like a PR hit that his team orchestrated. I think she has no case there. That's going to completely fall apart. Sharon says, I think that she's made her reputation worse and Ryan Reynolds in her pocket will not help. Well, here's the thing. This is also making Ryan Reynolds look bad because now a lot of people are looking at him and being like, oh, maybe you're not the fun, goofy guy that we, fell in love with and thought, Caro says, yes, Zach, me too. I want this to go to court. Yeah. Yep. Oh, it's Missy says Blake didn't apologize to the reporter either, whereas Anne Hathaway did apologize to the reporter. I mean, yeah, Anne Hathaway sent a message through her publicist, which who knows if that was really Anne Hathaway or it was just the publicist doing damage control. But yes, you are right. There was an apology at least sent from Anne Hathaway's side. And listen, to be very clear, I had no clue who the hell Justin Baldoni was prior to this. I mean, maybe I'd seen him here or there, but I didn't know anything about him. Christopher Palma says it's not an SA claim, it's a workplace harassment claim, which is totally different. Yes, and it's a harassment claim based off of alleged misconduct. But again, when you add context to these things, it's like, oh, were they really showing inappropriate naked videos of their wives? Or was it just this birthing video where you can't really see anything because the wife is underwater? And it's in relation to a birthing scene, right? Oh, he said that her outfit was sexy, but then we have the text message from her that says she wanted her character's outfit to look sexy. She wants it to be somebody she would check out if she were walking down the street. And he's like, oh, wow, you nailed it. Your outfit looks sexy. It's like, hello, did we just fall out of a coconut tree? What the fuck? It's wild. Does Mint Mobile know about this, Ryan? I don't know. Jennifer, Zach, your overview clears so much up. You are very smart and valid and would be a killer lawyer. What? It's hard? We will have a part 2 of this tomorrow where we will go through all of the timeline because there are a lot more details in all of this. A lot more. Ashley White says, what happens to the sequel from here? I don't think the sequel's coming out. So it ends with us, and then the sequel it starts with us. And my understanding of it starts with us is it focuses on the co-parenting relationship between Lily and Ryle, which are their two characters. That's Baldoni's character and Blake Lively's character. So the movie is focused on their two characters co-parenting after the events of It Ends With Us. So that ain't gonna happen. That's done. There's no way unless they recast someone or what. I don't know. Yeah, Justin said that he will not be part of the sequel. Yeah, but I believe he does still own the rights to the sequel, right? Wasn't he granted the rights to both the first and second book? So who knows what's going to happen? Kathy says everyone needs to stop bagging Blake. I believe there must be some truth to her complaint. Otherwise, she wouldn't take it this far. But here's the thing, Kathy, she didn't take it far at all, other than to make the claims. There's no lawsuit. She hasn't pursued anything. Um, so to me, like if he was able to already file his lawsuit against the New York Times and start dropping, text messages and adding context, then why did she only start with this complaint and why hasn't she filed the lawsuit? So how far is she actually taking this? Aside from playing with the public and trying to shift and manipulate their perception of how this all went down. So we'll have to wait and see. Susan said I was disappointed in the movie. I liked the movie. I I don't think the movie was bad at all. It's a very basic story, right? Girl meets boy, he's abusive. She eventually gets away from him in the end because he's abusive, but it's hard to leave him because she loves him and she wants to like not see it. Like it's not an original story. But it's not a bad story. I thought the movie was good. You can definitely tell that there's chemistry between them. The author is in love with Blake. She's the reason she was hired, and without evidence, took her side. She's a fangirl. I mean, maybe. I don't know why the author decided. But, like, here's the thing, though. Again, you have to remember Hollywood is very performative. So you have the powerful Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, and you have them claiming harassment, and you have her with this list of things that she claims happened. And if she just claims these things happened and you don't know the context behind all, the author wasn't on the set on daily. The author wasn't witnessing all of this go down. The author was like, holy shit, I need to be on the right side of history. And the right side of history, based off of my books, is to, support the woman. So when there's a woman that's claiming this man is being inappropriate with her on set, yeah, I'm absolutely going to take the side of the woman. People jumped a little too quickly though and didn't wait for this all to shake out. So let's see. Um, Caro says exactly, Zach. Blake and her team released the New York Times article to manipulate the public perception of Justin. Yes. And I get why he's suing the New York Times because he's saying that if they claimed that they had access to all of these text messages, then why didn't they use these other text messages in their reporting to show that there was different context behind some of these messages? No one is going to disparage Blake because of Ryan. Well, it's a good thing I can't be bothered by him. Norma says on The Hollywood Reporter, Ryan Reynolds swears he didn't force WME to drop Baldoni. Well, good for him. Of course, they're going to do. Again, it's all performative. How many people, when their client is in a big scandal and the scandal's too big, they're just like, "Oop, we're dropping them." It's their way of, making themselves look good and making themselves look like they want to be on the right side of history. So, yeah. Well, Janelle, there we go. Nicole says there's a huge difference between wanting to take Blake down and actually doing it. That's like saying there's no difference between thoughts and actions. Yeah, there's like, I want to see someone get taken down. But Kelly says, are you and Donna arguing about this? And are y'all okay to disagree? I think Donna's starting to see the light. I think I'm sure she's breaking it down on her show too. But I think, listen, these things take time, and we need more detail. We still don't even have the full story. So, you know, we'll have to wait to see how this all plays out. Blake had a questionable reputation for some time now. She may just be desperately trying to save face at this point. That's what it looks like. You don't think Baldoni is performative, Mr. I Sport Women? Oh, absolutely, Lucy. I definitely think he's performative as well. I called him a fake woke feminist. I think he's also performative. But when you look at everything and you see his telling and her telling, his telling seems to be a little more believable because it's presented in a more objective way, whereas hers is just solely through her own lens, and she doesn't have many facts or evidence to back it up. Tranquility Cafe says, let's face it, WME is not going to be truthful. They want to stay in business with Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, because he makes them more money. So it's like, well, who's going to make us more money? The one that's on the side of women and that brings in millions for us, or Justin Baldoni, who's being accused of harassing Blake Lively? Zach, you will need to cover the trial when it happens. Absolutely, Norma. Absolutely, positively, we're going to be covering that trial. We're going to be ready. I can't wait. Well, Janelle, we're going to have to see how this all plays out. Lourdes says he made the plan. That's an act itself, but I'll wait and see what happens in court. What plan did he make? What was the sinister, evil plan? Um, yeah, I'm curious where you guys are at. Do you guys feel like you're on the side of Baldoni, on the side of Blake, still somewhere in the middle? Let me know what side you tend to lean on and how you reach that conclusion. Christopher says it didn't earn enough for a sequel. She tried to get attention by having the film follow Deadpool to have the Barbenheimer moment, which didn't work. Like the two, yeah, like Barbenheimer, like they were so polar opposite, but like these two, Deadpool, and it ends with that, like it's just weird. Like, it didn't land at all. Catherine Huggins says, Zach, what do you think about the one interviewer that keeps talking about Blake and exposing all her interviews? I think she has a right to do that. I mean, she does seem like, listen, she's capitalizing off the moment, whether you want to call her thirsty or not. I don't know. But, you know, she's definitely driving a lot of it. But you want to say that anybody took her down? That reporter did a lot more than Justin Baldoni's team did. The plan he made to have been taken out of context. Oh, like the plan to take her down. There was no plan to take her down. And his text messages revealed that he absolutely did not want to take her down. He was like, let's not engage in any of this. And you have his PR team was being like, LOL, we're going to leak this to Perez Hilton. So, but first, Chef Penny's. Well, Chef Penny's lawsuit's not going to, her trial doesn't happen until 2026. New York Times attorneys are probably already calling to negotiate a settlement with Justin's attorneys. It doesn't seem like he wants he doesn't want to settle. He wants to go forth with a trial. I think it's about the precedent. Cuz also it's like, come on. The New York Times doesn't get away with running this false, narrative and then just paying out a settlement and being like, "All right, all done." No, like, hello, we need to actually start to hold some of these news agencies more accountable. They're getting sloppy. They're becoming the new National Enquirer. Zach, I appreciate that you've really tried to look at both sides of this fairly with an open mind. I've tried to, Sarah. Thank you for acknowledging that. Brittany says, I think they're both wrong. He should never have gave up that much control as a director. And I think with Blake, the texts make me not believe her. Yeah, I agree. He shouldn't have given up control. But he says she was threatening to not film. She was threatening to not promote the film. Like she was halting production. And every time production would get halted, that's more on the budget. So he was like, I just wanted to get the movie made. Like she was being difficult and like we just wanted to appease her. And we tried everything we could to just make her happy. And it was like endless. We could never make her happy until she had full absolute control. And she was even going to Sony and probably getting Ryan Reynolds to like flex his weight around as well. It's Missy says, isn't the New York Times supposed to be better than this? You would think. But then it makes you question how many times have they done stuff like this that we've ran with and believed? You know? Makes you think. Kristen says New York Times posted a response saying that they are going to vigorously defend. So we shall see in the next 30. Yeah, we'll see. I'm curious to see because again, like if there were more text messages, why was that narrative put out there then? I mean, I think that they're probably going to be like, listen, we were very similar to how The Sun won their defamation case from Johnny Depp because he was suing The Sun over defamation for reporting the Blake Lively allegations. And they're like, listen, we had a source. The source told us this, and we believed our source. We trusted our source. Like, and that's how the news agencies get away with it. But they're claiming that they had thousands and thousands of text messages that they went through. And he's just like, well, if you went through all of them, then why did you conveniently leave these out? Which may go to his point about malice. Suing the New York Times is going to be really tough. I don't know if he'll win it, but I imagine there's a bigger play at hand here. I don't think he's trying to win his case against the New York Times. I think there's a bigger plan here. I'm not quite sure what his legal team has in store, but I would imagine it's going to be bigger than we think it is. All right. The whole removing the emoji thing seems so small, but so damning, right? It is so small, but it is so damning because they intentionally rewrote the text messages and left out the emoji. And the emoji is actually a really big piece showing that that message was sarcastic and not literal. So they completely manipulated it. But listen, if you guys are enjoying this, definitely be sure to, I mean, if you look at my Apple Podcast reviews right now, apparently I hate women. So, please continue to drag me. But thank you guys for listening to No Fields with Zack Peter. We are new episodes released Monday through Friday, weekday morning. So be sure to tune in. Please leave me an Apple Podcast rating and review if you've enjoyed the podcast. You can also leave a rating on Spotify. And if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe for all the latest tea. We will cover this a lot more. Like I said, part 2 of the Baldoni lawsuit against the New York Times. The timeline we will be breaking down tomorrow, so you can tune in here on YouTube, or you can catch it on all your favorite podcast platforms. I'm Zack Peter. Thank you guys for following and listening and tuning in. You can follow me at Just Plain Zack all over the internet, or follow the podcast on Instagram at No Filter with Zack. So you can follow me personally at Just Plain Zack, or follow the podcast at No Filter with Zack. No Filter with Zack Peter, streaming weekday mornings, Monday through Friday. Get it? Let's get it. All right, guys. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. Be sure to hit the like button on your way out. I'll talk to you later. Ciao for now. Bye, 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 bye. A dollar makes me holla. Bye, guys.